There's a profound misconception in our society that when we struggle with emotional pain, addiction, or mental health challenges, we are somehow broken and need to be fixed. This belief system has permeated our healthcare, our relationships, and most damaging of all, our relationship with ourselves. But what if I told you that this entire framework is not only wrong, but actively harmful? What if the very idea that you need to be fixed is the problem itself? The groundbreaking work of Dr. Gabor Maté reveals a revolutionary truth. You don't need to be fixed because you were never broken in the first place. You need to be understood, witnessed, and met with compassion in your deepest pain and struggle. When we operate from the premise that people are broken, we immediately create a dynamic of judgment and shame. We position ourselves as somehow defective, as if our struggles are evidence of our inadequacy rather than natural responses to life's challenges. This medical model approach has dominated Western psychology for decades, focusing on symptoms, diagnoses, and treatments rather than understanding the deeper story of why these symptoms emerged in the first place. It's like trying to silence a smoke alarm without addressing the fire it's warning us about. The truth is that what we call mental illness, addiction, or behavioral problems are actually adaptive responses to life circumstances. They are the psyche's attempt to survive, to cope, to find some measure of relief or protection in an overwhelming world. When a child grows up in an environment where their emotional needs aren't met, where they experience trauma, neglect, or chronic stress, their developing nervous system learns to adapt. These adaptations, while necessary for survival at the time, often become the very patterns that we later label as disorders. Consider the person who struggles with anxiety. Rather than seeing this as a brain malfunction that needs to be medicated away, we might understand it as a nervous system that learned early on that the world is dangerous and unpredictable. The anxiety isn't the problem, it's the solution the mind developed to try to stay safe. When we approach it with this understanding, we can begin to work with the anxiety rather than against it, honoring its protective function while gently helping the nervous system learn new ways of responding. The same principle applies to addiction, which Gabor Maté describes not as a disease of the brain, but as an attempt to solve the problem of emotional pain. People don't become addicted to substances or behaviors because they're weak or morally flawed. They become addicted because these substances or behaviors provide temporary relief from suffering that feels unbearable. The addiction is the symptom, not the disease. The disease is the pain, the trauma, the disconnection from self and others that preceded the addictive behavior. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with you?" we begin to ask, "What happened to you?" This question opens up space for understanding, for compassion, for healing that addresses root causes rather than just managing symptoms. It acknowledges that our struggles make sense given our experiences, that our responses are human and understandable rather than pathological. When we understand that behavior and emotional responses are adaptive, we can begin to appreciate the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Every coping mechanism, every defense, every symptom represents the mind's attempt to survive and protect itself. This realization can be profoundly healing because it removes the layer of shame and self-judgment that often compounds our original pain. You're not broken for having developed these responses. You're human. The conventional medical model often treats symptoms in isolation, as if they exist in a vacuum, separate from the person's life story, relationships, and circumstances. But symptoms don't exist in isolation. They emerge from the complex interplay of genetics, environment, relationships, and life experiences. A person's depression might be their psyche's way of protecting them from feeling the full weight of unprocessed grief. Their anger might be the only way they learn to maintain boundaries or assert their needs. This understanding doesn't minimize the reality of suffering or suggest that we should simply accept harmful patterns.
Instead, it provides a foundation for healing that honors the person's experience while creating space for growth and change. When we approach our struggles with curiosity rather than judgment, we can begin to understand the deeper needs and wounds that our symptoms are trying to address. The journey toward healing begins with witnessing. This means seeing yourself clearly, without the filter of shame or the pressure to be different than you are. It means recognizing that your struggles are not evidence of your defectiveness, but expressions of your humanity. Witnessing requires us to slow down, to get curious about our inner experience, and to approach ourselves with the same compassion we might offer a dear friend who is suffering.
True healing happens in relationship. We are wounded in relationship, and we heal in relationship. This doesn't necessarily mean therapy, although that can be helpful. It means finding people who can see you clearly, who can hold space for your pain without trying to fix you or rush you through your process. It means learning to have this kind of relationship with yourself as well, becoming your own witness and companion rather than your harshest critic. The process of being understood begins with understanding ourselves. This requires developing what we might call emotional literacy, the ability to recognize, name, and honor our feelings without immediately trying to change them. Most of us learned early on that certain feelings were not acceptable, so we developed elaborate strategies to avoid or suppress them. But feelings are not problems to be solved. They are information about our inner state and our needs. When we truly understand that our struggles are adaptive responses rather than character flaws, we can begin to relate to them differently. We can appreciate the parts of ourselves that develop these responses while also recognizing that what once served us may no longer be helpful. This creates space for conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. We can thank our anxiety for trying to protect us while also teaching our nervous system new ways of finding safety. Now, let me pause here and ask you something that might resonate deeply with your own experience. Have you ever noticed how different you feel when someone truly understands what you're going through compared to when they try to fix you or give you advice? Can you remember a time when you felt genuinely seen and accepted, exactly as you were, without any pressure to change or be different? Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and for being open to exploring these ideas with me. Your willingness to question conventional wisdom and look deeper into the nature of healing is exactly what our world needs more of. The difference between being understood and being fixed is profound. When someone tries to fix us, there's an implicit message that we are wrong, broken, or inadequate as we are. This creates resistance and shame, which actually interfere with healing. But when someone truly understands us, there's a sense of relief, of being met exactly where we are. This understanding creates the safety necessary for genuine transformation to occur. Understanding doesn't mean accepting harmful behaviors or giving up on growth and change. It means recognizing that lasting change comes from a place of self-acceptance rather than self-rejection. When we fight against ourselves, we create internal conflict that consumes enormous amounts of energy. But when we work with ourselves, understanding our patterns and needs, we can channel that energy toward healing and growth. The trauma-informed approach that Gabor Maté advocates recognizes that trauma is not just what happened to us, but how those experiences affected our nervous system and our capacity for connection. Trauma disrupts our ability to feel safe in our bodies, to trust our instincts, and to form secure relationships. Healing trauma requires more than just talking about what happened. It requires helping the nervous system learn new patterns of safety and connection. This is where the power of understanding becomes most apparent. When we understand that our hypervigilance, our difficulty trusting others, our tendency to shut down or explode under stress are all normal responses to abnormal circumstances, we can begin to work with these patterns rather than against them.
we can create conditions that support our nervous system's natural healing capacity rather than fighting our biology. The concept of attachment helps us understand why relationships are so central to healing. Our earliest relationships shape our nervous system and our expectations about safety, love, and connection. If those early relationships were characterized by inconsistency, neglect, or trauma, we learn to protect ourselves in ways that may later interfere with intimacy and trust. But these protective patterns made perfect sense given our circumstances. Understanding attachment doesn't mean blaming our parents or caregivers. Most parents do the best they can with the resources and awareness they have. Understanding our attachment patterns helps us recognize why we respond to relationships the way we do, and it provides a roadmap for healing. We can learn to recognize our triggers, to communicate our needs more clearly, and to create the secure relationships that support our healing.
The body holds the story of our experiences, and healing requires including the body in our understanding. Our muscles, our breathing, our posture all reflect our emotional state and our history. When we learn to listen to our body's wisdom, we gain access to information that our thinking mind might miss. The body often knows what it needs for healing before our conscious mind catches up. This somatic awareness is particularly important for those who have experienced trauma. Trauma often leaves people feeling disconnected from their bodies, as if their body is the enemy rather than their ally. But the body is not the problem. The body is trying to protect us and communicate with us. When we learn to befriend our body, to listen to its signals and honor its needs, we create a foundation for healing that goes beyond just cognitive understanding. And you know what? Speaking of understanding and connection, if this message is resonating with you, if you're feeling that sense of finally someone gets it, then you might want to hit that like button. Not because I need the validation, though I appreciate it, but because when we engage with content that speaks to our healing journey, we're actually practicing the art of saying yes to what serves us. It's a small act of self-care, a way of telling the algorithm to bring you more of what feeds your soul rather than what feeds your fears. The journey of understanding ourselves and healing our wounds is not a linear process. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, times when old patterns resurface. This is not failure. This is the nature of healing. Like a spiral staircase, we may find ourselves revisiting familiar territory, but we're doing so from a higher perspective, with greater wisdom and compassion than before. Healing happens in layers. We might work through one aspect of our trauma or one pattern of behavior only to discover deeper layers that need attention. This can be discouraging if we expect healing to be a straight line from problem to solution. But when we understand that healing is a process of peeling back layers, of gradually building capacity for presence and connection, we can approach our journey with more patience and self-compassion. The goal is not to eliminate all pain or struggle from our lives. Pain is an inevitable part of the human experience, and it serves important functions. It tells us when something needs attention, when boundaries have been crossed, when we need to make changes. The goal is to develop a different relationship with pain, one that doesn't require us to numb out or run away, but allows us to be present with our experience while taking care of our needs. This brings us to the question of what it means to be truly healthy. Health is not the absence of symptoms or struggles. Health is the capacity to respond to life's challenges with flexibility, resilience, and authenticity. It's the ability to feel our feelings without being overwhelmed by them, to maintain connections with others while honoring our own needs, to find meaning and purpose even in the midst of difficulty. When we understand that our struggles are part of our humanity rather than evidence of our brokenness, we can begin to see them as teachers rather than enemies. Our anxiety might teach us about our need for safety and control. Our depression might teach us about our need for meaning and connection.
Our anger might teach us about our boundaries and our values. These emotions are not problems to be solved, but messengers with important information. The practice of self-compassion is essential for this kind of understanding. Self-compassion means treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a good friend who is struggling. It means recognizing that suffering is part of the human experience, that we are not alone in our struggles, and that we deserve care and understanding even when we're not at our best. This shift from self-criticism to self-compassion is revolutionary. Most of us learned that being hard on ourselves would motivate us to change, but research shows the opposite is true. Self-criticism activates our threat detection system, making us more reactive and less capable of learning and growth. Self-compassion, on the other hand, creates the safety and stability necessary for genuine transformation.
As we near the end of our exploration together, I want to reflect on the profound implications of this understanding. When we recognize that people don't need to be fixed, but need to be understood, we begin to see everyone differently. We see the person struggling with addiction not as weak or morally flawed, but as someone trying to cope with pain. We see the anxious person not as neurotic, but as someone whose nervous system learned to be hypervigilant. We see the angry person not as difficult, but as someone whose boundaries may have been repeatedly violated. This understanding has the power to transform not just our relationship with ourselves, but our relationships with others. When we can see past the surface behaviors to the underlying needs and wounds, we become capable of true compassion. We stop taking others' actions personally and start recognizing them as expressions of their own struggles and attempts to get their needs met. The ripple effects of this understanding extend far beyond individual healing. When we stop pathologizing normal human responses to abnormal circumstances, we begin to question the systems and structures that create these circumstances in the first place. We start to see that the solution to widespread mental health struggles is not just better treatment, but creating conditions that support human flourishing from the beginning. This is the vision that Gabor Maté offers us, a world where we understand that health and illness exist on a continuum, where we recognize the deep connections between individual suffering and social conditions, where we approach healing with curiosity and compassion rather than judgment and quick fixes. It's a world where being human, with all our struggles and imperfections, is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be honored. So, as we conclude this journey together, I want to leave you with this truth. You are not broken. You have never been broken. You are a human being who has developed creative and adaptive responses to life's challenges. Some of these responses may no longer serve you, and that's okay. Change is possible. Healing is possible, but it starts with understanding and accepting yourself exactly as you are right now. You don't need to be fixed because you were never broken in the first place. You need to be understood, and that understanding begins with you. If this message has touched something in you, if you're feeling that shift from self-judgment to self-compassion, I'd love for you to hit that like button. More importantly, I invite you to leave a comment sharing your own journey of understanding and healing if you feel called to do so. Your story matters, and it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you're hungry for more content that honors your humanity and supports your healing journey, consider subscribing to Not What It Seems. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. And remember, you are enough, exactly as you are.